1-0. Welcome back to the YouTube channel. My name is Lucas, aka 3 Point Spanish King, and today we're here with our guest Michael Wagner from New Zealand, and we're here to review the second Test match between New Zealand and Bangladesh. And Michael, this was a very one-sided match. This was probably what was expected in the first Test from New Zealand. How did you see their performance?
New Zealand seemed, it seemed pretty clinical. New Zealand batted. One of the things I thought I liked on day one was Tom Latham in particular made a point to not be quite so defensive. And whenever Bangladesh pitched up, to really go after it.
Yeah.
Now there's a risk in there, but he backed his skills. The risk is that you nick off the slips and you look like a fool. But he backed the skills and he managed to get a few away early. And the result of that is Bangladesh shortened their length up. Their bowlers didn't want to get driven, so they shortened their length up and became ineffective. And I wonder, I've got some theories as to why that happened, but I thought it was good. It was a good batting plan. The way that he played changed the way the bowlers bowled and made them bowl in a way that how he wanted them to do it. And that basically made it to a situation where New Zealand could apply all the pressure and Bangladesh just couldn't handle it.
Yep. We'll go through these theories, as you said, Michael. You do have some theories. Swaknet said hello, Swaknet. Go through them, Michael.
Okay, so
we
the
want
theory,
to know.
In the first Test, Liton was keeping wickets.
Yes.
Right? And he was keeping very well.
Yes, he was
with him behind the stumps, and I wondered they started to get a bit short in the first Test, and then they got their length right. They got it sorted as the day went on, and they improved throughout the day in the first Test. In the second Test, they got worse throughout the first day. The end of the day, they were bowling much worse than they were, and Bangladesh had a different keeper. And I wonder whether or not. And look, I don't know. I've put this out there to a couple of quicks, and I've got various responses. But I wonder whether or not Liton was giving them the good feedback, and maybe the other keeper wasn't giving them the right feedback.
So Hassan, the wicketkeeper Hassan, you're talking about.
Yeah. It was the same. I think Shanto is what they were calling him.
Shanto. Yeah.
His nickname. But he. But he was the thing with him is like he seemed to be worrying very much about his game. He was struggling with the ball carrying through so much. It was a bit more than what he was used to. And I think he wasn't giving the feedback to the bowlers about what they needed. When I put it out to a couple of bowlers, I had a couple respond. Andre Adams said that he didn't really find that keepers made much difference in his game at all. Whereas Ian O'Brien did say that it was that the ball coming on, he was getting he got feedback from keepers sometimes about how the ball was hitting his gloves and about, there was a couple little things, and particularly he found reverse swing. Keeper made a big difference for him in learning how to control the reverse swing. And we saw in the first game, Bangladesh bowled reverse swing really well. Second one didn't happen as much. I wonder whether or not the keeper made a big part in that. So that was a thought that maybe changing keepers wasn't the right move for Bangladesh when they Liton keeping so well in the first game.
Well, take out keeping, Michael. Their fielding was horrendous. My motto is that when you field good, you play good. And Bangladesh in that first Test, as you pointed out, were fantastic in the field. This Test match, absolutely a nightmare, giving overthrows. I mentioned to Twitter that they gave Tom Latham runs, but it wasn't Tom Latham. It was Will Young instead, as you pointed out.
Yep.
7 overthrows and another 5 overthrows. Absolutely dreadful. I was going to say pathetic, but we'll say pathetic fielding performance from a team that has always had bad fielding performances. But when you look at that first Test and you compare it to the second Test, what happened? Why were they so bad in this Test match compared to the first?
Look, I wonder if some of it was how New Zealand let them play. But I think, there's a point where once you get on a roll and you get your momentum up, it's a lot easier. I've found that when your team is playing someone and they're 106 for 7, that's when you take the screamer of the catch. You don't take a screamer of a catch when they're 185 for 1. Not normally. Normally that. I mean, I know umpiring. A few times that I had plum LBWs that no one appealed for when it was 100 without loss. Whereas other times they were appealing for ones that pitched outside leg and hit outside off. Then they stopped appealing for it because it hit the leg because the team was 60-5. And those little changes. It's a degree of professionalism to keep your fielding standards up even when the other team's on top. English did it in the first one, but it's hard to do that. And I think the longer you're in the field, the more discouraged you get, the easier it is to field poorly.
We'll get more into the Bangladesh side of things at the end of this review. Going on the first innings, Tom Latham, absolutely magnificent. Michael, I honestly thought the way that he was playing, I was thinking, because I made this tweet to you, I said to you 400 was on the cards. I was absolutely serious. He did not put a foot wrong, and I think in batting so long, you do get tired. I think the closest to that 400 was David Warner. He got out a couple of times on no balls, but Tim Payne declared that day, which got heavily criticised. But it is a very taxing thing to do, no matter what attack you face, to bat for so long. And in the end, probably Liton played a tired shot, but he was
I don't think that was it at all, because he's batted longer than that before.
Okay.
I mean, he's actually, I think it was his 5th time that he's batted 500 minutes, something like that. Like he's batting long is not a new thing for him.
No, you mentioned this on Twitter. You actually said that you were actually very surprised that he was batting this quickly with his strike rate. He's not normally like that. I saw that tweet that you made earlier.
Yeah, normally he gets his 100. It's normally pretty close to what happens first: 100 balls or 30 runs. He normally is pretty slow to start. Yeah. And there's only 4 times that he's scored 50 in the first 30 overs. So whereas in this game here, it was after 28 overs, he was on 66. I think it was 25 overs, he was on 66. So he was well faster than he normally is at the start. And some of that is, it was an effort. It was a conscious effort to play some more shots, I think. Some of it was that Bangladesh bowled in good areas for him. But what he did do, and he did very well, is he did limit his game to 3 shots. Yes. He played the leg glance, he played the sort of extra cover drive, and he played the cut shot. And those were the only 3 shots he played for his first 100 runs or so. Now, it happened that there were plenty of opportunities for him to play those 3 shots. But those were that was anything else he either defended or left. Those were the only shots that he played. And so there was a degree of patience, but when the ball was there, he went for it. It was textbook opening batting on a green pitch, and he did it so well. But the thing that happened at the end is he decided to play for the team. When they got to a certain point, you could see that the decision was made that, right, we've now got enough runs. I think it was 430, 440. There was some point there where there was obviously where it said, right, we want to declare soon, let's go for it. And you saw them both start hitting the ball. And, I mean, Latham, he scored 20 runs off the 4 balls before he got out. And then he got out trying to add some more. It was very much team first. I've got my runs, let's go for it. 411
was the mark where the wicket started to fall because of the shots. New Zealand wanted to pick up the run rate, just for reference.
Yep. Yeah, it was in that range. It was all of a sudden you could see there was a change in intent.
Yeah. Where do you rank this innings from Latham? Do you go with it's only Bangladesh, but you can only play who you play, or do you say no? This is right up there with one of his best. Where do you rank this?
I don't think it was his best innings.
Yep.
You, James. Sorry, my son just came.
That's okay, mate.
I don't think it was his best innings. It was a good innings, and I guess the context of the fact New Zealand being 1 down in the series and needing to win it, he was captaining, and that is extra pressure. It was a fairly green pitch, although it's probably the brownest pitch I've seen at Hagley Oval, other than the probably second brownest pitch I've seen at Hagley. I think the game where McCullum scored his 100 was a similar colour. It was a greeny brown again. So
against Australia?
Yeah, they got one against Australia.
Yeah. Thanks for reminding me. The world record. Yeah.
That was very much a bold first pitch, and it was hard work on that first day. I think New Zealand were at about, what was it? Because McCullum was batting at number 5, and he came in with 12 runs on the board.
Well, he wasn't on tour for very long, Michael. Trust me.
No. I had tickets for day 2, and I drove up to Christchurch from Dunedin. Couldn't get there for day 1. Got there to day 2 and saw 380 runs or 1 wicket or something after there'd been 14 wickets fall on the first day. And it was just so flat, and it was very, very disappointing. A couple of decisions that didn't go New Zealand's way, to be fair, on that day, but that's beside the point. That I don't think it's Tom Latham's best innings. I think there was one that he played. I mean, there's been some one-day innings that I think are probably his best innings. Even one of his knocks in a T20 match in Bangladesh, I think, was the equal of this one in terms of batting quality, even if it wasn't. A 60 in a T20 shouldn't hold as much weight as a 200 or 250 in a Test match. But I think in terms of the quality of stroke play and the difficulty of conditions, it probably stands alongside it. But it was a very good innings.
Yeah. Okay. Another innings that has taken all the shine off this because of Latham's 250 was Darren Conway's 100. Another 100 to his repertoire, Michael. Just keeps on scoring runs.
Yeah. Well, I was looking into some records because when Tom Latham was is now the top equal century scorer for New Zealand amongst New Zealand openers, and when I was looking down the list, I saw a guy in the list called Graeme Dowling, who was the captain of New Zealand for about 7 years or something, opened the batting for most of his career, except for a couple of games at number 3 and number 4, was probably New Zealand's best batsman, the top run scorer during the 1960s. He got 3 centuries in his career.
At an average of 31,
Devon Conway's done it in 5 matches. So it's a pretty good achievement, you've got to say. And those matches have been 2 games on a green top in New Zealand, and then 3 matches against England and India in England. Against a game on a green top, on a couple of green tops in New Zealand, and 2 games against really top bowling attacks. So it's not a bad way to start.
I wouldn't have thought so, Michael. Just for reference, before this Test match, he 514 runs at an average of 64. That will probably go up after this Test match for sure. So
I think it's 9 now.
Okay. Well, there you go. I trust you on that. Another one that's been under pressure. Go on, Michael.
Oh, that's just from seeing it on a graphic on TV. I'm not 100%. I haven't looked that up, so don't take it as gospel. Yeah.
We've known you long enough, Michael. We'll take it from you. Another innings that's probably underrated and probably needed was Tom Blundell. A quick fire 50. A man that's been out of form. You've criticised this on other shows. He hasn't found his form, but really got it to click. Yes, he had to play attacking shots. New Zealand were way in front, but still a very good knock of 50 just to get him in some kind of form for South Africa.
Well, he looks good down the order. I don't rate him as an opener, and I don't think he's a number 6. But I think down at number 7, number 8, he's got the right sort of game that he can come in and increase the tempo. Very, very different to BJ Watley. And it's difficult because he's going to get compared. He's a different player. He's going to do a different role. I think his keeping was better and his batting was improved too. So it's some positives for Blundell.
Yeah. Okay. With the bowling side, I thought Bangladesh were completely disappointed with their bowling. Ebert Hossain, the one that took 5 for 64 something, or 6 for 64, I thought was very disappointing again. What did you make of their bowlers?
I really felt for Ebert. I think he had 4 catches dropped bowling, something like that.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah.
I think they dropped their heads a little bit. I mean, I really felt for Ebert. He had a bunch of catches dropped. He had one of them was an edge that went for second slip that went for 7. Another one was an edge that went through the slips that went for 4. and then he had the one that was the 5 from a quick single was a shot that wasn't in control of as well. So you look at that. There's effectively two dropped catches that he could have had from those 3 balls. He could have been 2 for 1. Instead, he was none for 20 off 3 balls or something like that. So like it's terrible. None for 16 off 3 balls. It's terrible luck, that sort of thing. But it comes and goes. You have bad days in Test cricket, and what I do like about them, I think they're a really good combination. I think those 3, they reminded me of Southee, Boult and Wagner in 2013 when they were just coming together, and like they've had the Southee and Boult along with Bracewell and Martin had bowled out Australia in that game in Hobart, and it was like we thought, oh, here we go, and then they were a bit rubbish for the next couple of years as they were finding their feet and learning how to play Test cricket. But they've done that now, and you'd say you'd probably back them as ahead of maybe any partnership in the world on a helpful pitch. I mean, ahead of they've certainly gone past Anderson and Broad, I'd say, in terms of effectiveness. And only when I was thinking about who's out there, Stark and Hazelwood, possibly. That's really the conversation at the moment.
If Stark's at his best, I agree, but Stark's too inconsistent for me to put him in that conversation.
Yeah,
personally.
Well, the thing with Stark, when he has a good day, he has a really, really good day.
Oh yeah. So
you take the rough with the smooth a little bit. But you see, but I mean, they're just so consistently good with the new ball, and then Wagner offers something with the old ball that not quicks do. I think Eberdot has the ability to be that old ball quick bowler. Because I liked the Shoreful. I thought I hadn't seen much of him before, and I thought he was excellent, the tall left armer. And Taskin just looks like a guy that's got 300 Test wickets in him. I mean, it was like watching. To be honest, the guy, I feel that he just hasn't learned how to take wickets yet. He's got all of the skills, all of the physical attributes that if he was to have a season of county cricket or a season in South African domestic cricket or something, you could see him becoming a world class, like a guy that's just averages 20 every season and rips teams apart. He's that good. I mean, he's bowling 143, 144 Ks, putting the ball both ways, hitting the seam regularly. He should be getting bag loads of wickets, and he just isn't yet. But I don't think it'll be long.
So speaking of the bowlers that you mentioned, the New Zealand bowlers, actually, I think it'll be disrespectful. We'll talk about Ross Taylor's innings because he only got one innings. He only got one chance, Michael. I'm guessing, Ross Taylor being the team player he is probably would have said, just enforce the follow on. I don't really want to bat. He by the way he sounds, by the way he does his interviews, he's a very shy, modest player. He doesn't take much for granted. He doesn't, go over the top with his celebrations. He seems like a very quiet guy. And unfortunately, made 28, but 26. Sorry, is it 26 or 28? But the bigger picture, what have you made of his Test career? Obviously, he'll play in the ODIs. But what have you made of his Test career?
I mean, he's had a very good career.
You
look at his. At one point, there was a graph that I'd seen that was runs per game and batting average comparison with him and Martin Crowe. And pretty much neck and neck the whole way through their careers up until Crowe's retirement, and Taylor just kept on going. In fact, Taylor started pulling away from Crowe. And that's, that says that he's probably a really, we perhaps haven't appreciated quite how good he is. He's been a real solid player at number 4 for New Zealand.
He has.
He's had perhaps a couple of below average years, but when you look at the last 2 years, I think he's averaged just under 40 over the last 2.5 years or something.
Yep.
You're like, well, when you're calling an average of 40 a bit of a downturn, you've been a pretty good player.
Just speaking of that, it probably doesn't get recognised as much. Is it disrespectful to say he's had an underrated career? Because if he came from England, if he came from Australia, with his runs he scored, he would be, people would give him much more recognition. But is that a disrespectful term, calling him underrated because he comes from New Zealand and not a big nation?
I think it's perhaps he's often forgotten. I mean, the ICC put out a thing about that there were 3 batsmen in the world that had 7,000 runs.
Yeah.
And they left Ross Taylor off the list.
Yeah, that's disrespectful.
He's easy not to notice, and it was they, but I think part of it is also that New Zealand don't play as many tests. I mean, Alistair Cook retired 5 years ago.
Yep.
And in the and from Ross Taylor's debut until today, Alistair Cook has played more tests than Ross Taylor, despite being retired 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Root debuted 7 years after Ross Taylor and has played more tests than Ross. So there's a point where, I mean, Taylor. Someone said that there are guys that Ross Taylor played with who are in their 50s, and there are guys that Ross Taylor played with who are teenagers. The guy's been around for a long time, but because New Zealand don't get any tests, it hasn't been noticed as much.
I've actually got this stat for you. Alistair Cook played 161 matches with an average of 45. Ross Taylor averages 44, but he only played 111 test matches. So that probably is a good indicator of how actually good Ross Taylor is. As you said, Alistair Cook's been around, for a very long time, just as much as Ross Taylor, vice versa. Yep. And Ross Taylor to average, similar to what Alistair Cook has, is a very good player. And you're probably rightly so. New Zealand adds that from that stat. They just don't play many test matches. But that's not Ross Taylor's fault. I still think it is a little bit disrespectful to call him underrated, as most people say, because his stats is probably good as anybody else's out there.
I mean, I think underrated means that people don't really realise quite how good he is. I think the general public haven't. So underrated is the thing that he's...
Which I think is a shame, because he's a great player, Michael. He's a very good player.
Well, you look at his ODI stats; they hold up pretty well from AB de Villiers, who I consider the greatest ODI batsman of all time.
Yeah.
Numbers-wise, Taylor's numbers stack up. So
48 average. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think particularly since the introduction of the new ball in the 2 new ball rule in 2015, if you look in the last 7 years, he's been absolutely immense. Which has favoured someone that bats at number 4 in New Zealand conditions. When you're getting a hard ball, but it's not moving around too much when he comes to the crease. It's kind of perfect. But even despite that, he's been outstanding. So we'll get to see a bit more of him in one day cricket. As
we said, he's not retiring. Yeah,
he's still playing one days. He had planned on playing through to the World Cup, but I think he's indicated that that's not going to happen now. But yeah, we'll see, because he may. I mean, the other thing that's happening is if Kane Williamson's injury doesn't get better, they may convince Ross Taylor to stay, to come out of retirement for 2 more matches against South Africa.
It might possibly work. We'll go to the New Zealand bowling, or the Bangladesh first innings, and this was absolutely one-way traffic. This was a demolition derby. Bangladesh bowled out for 126 in 41 overs. Trent Boult went past 300 wickets. Michael took a fifer. Clinical from New Zealand, or bad batting from Bangladesh?
A bit of both. I mean, I think what happened, Bangladesh did try to do the same thing that New Zealand did, and they just didn't quite have the skill to pull it off. So they were, all of a sudden, they were 2 down for 11. And then they decided, maybe we need to shut up shop and just defend it out a little bit. And then they were 5 down for 11. 4 down for 11 a few overs later. And then and at that point there, once you're 4 for 11, it's pretty hard to come back.
I think so.
And so, you got to look at the context a little bit. And I think, Bangladesh went out there with a plan, and that plan didn't work. And it, not just that it didn't work, it failed spectacularly. And so, the result of that is, look, if a couple of those edges had have not gone to hand and gone over the slips or whatever, we could be talking about the great fight back from Bangladesh and how they managed to hit New Zealand off their legs, but they didn't. They got caught, and So there is always an element of that. You can't judge you can't judge a plan on the result every time. You've got to see it happen more than once, and that was. But I thought New Zealand bowled well. Bangladesh batted fairly poorly, but it's also the sort of thing that when you've been in the field for a day and a half, they reckon it's drinks on day 2. When you hit the middle drinks on day 2, when you hit that point, it's worth 2 wickets. Because people's just legs are not there. And Bangladesh's middle order showed they were really good against the ball when it wasn't doing much. But no middle order batsman is good against new ball swing. And you saw that once the top order were cleaned out, it was really just waiting to happen. When the ball, what happens often in New Zealand pitches, because they're not as hard and not as abrasive, they've got the grass on it. It takes a little bit longer for the shine to come off the ball. So what happens? The ball swings heaps for about overs, sort of 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then it sort of stops swinging for a few overs, and then the shine starts to come off the ball and it starts to swing again, and it's normally about over 25, 30, and we saw it happen. Bangladesh in trouble, 27 for 5. Then they started putting things together. They started going together, and then Trent Boult came back, and the ball started misbehaving, and then bang! They were within 4 overs they were gone, and you saw that sort of, or 5 overs, something of that happened, and that's a pattern that happens a bit with New Zealand pitchers. Those guys, the tail aren't good against the swinging ball, and that's been the case for history. Yeah, there's no tail ender as good against the swinging ball.
No.
I mean, top order batsmen struggle against it, let alone tail ender. So. Once it looks like carnage once they get in amongst it, but it's the first couple of wickets that set it up.
And of course, Trent Boult goes past 300 Test wickets again. Another one that's in a similar position to Ross Taylor, doesn't get the recognition as you would a Mitchell Starc. And everybody raves about Mitchell Starc, but Trent Boult has taken more wickets than Mitchell Starc, and they've been around for around the same time.
I think they debuted in the same game.
Yeah. Okay. There you go. Thank you for that.
Maybe Starc was the same series. I think Starc debuted and won Boult in match 2. It was something like that.
So where obviously Trent Boult is far from finished. He's still got more years to come, certainly. Where do you rank Trent Boult as a bowler worldwide?
I've been thinking about this. It's really hard to say. I think one of the things that you've got to say with Trent Boult is that, I mean, he's shown in the IPL that he's a very good bowler without Tim Southee there. But we've also seen that in Test match cricket, when he's got Tim Southee at the other end, he's just a league ahead of where he is when he doesn't have Southee there. And so I think that combination is vital. Southee and Boult together are much greater than Southee or Boult apart. And so it's easy to perhaps look at their average and go, oh, wow, what a great bowler. And he's a very good bowler. But I think it's the combination of Boult and Southee, and particularly Wagner, who bowls the mud overs, the overs that no one wants to bowl. The overs where no one wants to rest. He bowls those overs that mean that Boult and Southee can bowl the ones where you actually, where you take the wicket, where the wickets come a bit easier. So because he doesn't have to do the donkey work as well because of Wagner, and because he's got Southee that's setting up the batsman at the other end, I think his numbers probably flatter him a little bit.
Will he get to 400?
I'm a New Zealand correspondent. I'm supposed to say how wonderful the New Zealand players are.
No, we like your we like your honesty, Michael. We like this honesty. Keep going.
It's the combination of Boult, Southee, and Wagner that is so great. And now Jamieson's adding in another element. The combination is the sum is greater than the individual parts.
Will he get to 400?
It's a lot of wickets to take when New Zealand play 8 tests a year.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
I mean, so if he's taking, let's say he takes 4 wickets per test, which is about what top bowlers tend to average.
Yeah.
That means that he needs 25 more tests. So that's 3 years of being fit.
Yep.
Yeah, I think he's got a decent chance at that.
Yep.
430 to go past Richard Hadley.
Yep.
Yeah, that's probably adding an extra year. He's starting to get 36. That's not many bowlers are still going at 36.
Yeah,
so
true. Yeah,
400's a distinct possibility. 430 to be New Zealand's top wicket taker. Well, I think Southee will end up with more than him anyway. So,
okay, there you go.
But I think will they pass Headley? Probably not.
For reference, Trent Boult is 32 years of age. Okay, now back to the Bangladesh bowled out. Unfortunately, it was stumps when they came in, and New Zealand did enforce the follow-on. Do you think that was the right call, or would there have been a temptation to make Ross Taylor open and give him a farewell, or no?
No, that's not the way New Zealand tend to play. In fact, I was really surprised they gave him the last over. And there's a particular reason why I was surprised. I'll get into that a little bit later on. But in terms of enforcing the follow-on, yes, I was expecting them to, and the reason is because there's rain forecast tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
They're probably going to have to bowl for a day, and then they'd get a rest and be able to bowl again on the last day. If there wasn't rain forecast, then I think they would think about going and hitting another 150 runs and giving the bowlers a rest. But because there's rain forecast, you don't want to end up with a draw and losing a series to Bangladesh time.
Indeed. No, good point. Bangladesh much better in the second, way much better in the second innings. Made 278. Liton just made a fantastic 100. It's just a shame, Michael, they couldn't do this in the first innings. Otherwise, we could have had a real game.
Even if they'd scored 300 in the first innings, they weren't going to win. They weren't going to make a game of it. Look, it was good to see a bit of fight being shown, and Liton Dust, I really like him. He's one of the two Bangladeshi players I really like watching bat. The other one is Sumyasaka, who always looks good and then gets out. Liton Dust, it's starting to look good and then actually go on for a little bit more. But he's a wonderful little player to watch. He has a go, and I thought at one point he was going to have a crack at just trying to hit everything out of the park, but he played. He did play within a batting plan. He picked the right balls to go after. He played a really good innings. It was a little bit Brendan McCullum-ish, actually, the way that he played. Yeah,
I saw that tweet that you made. You brought up Nathan Astor when he smashed Darren Goff and Cardick all over the pitch that day against England. With the bowling side of New Zealand, Cole Jamieson picked up some form. He hasn't this series hasn't been that very potent, but did found some form in that last innings. What have you made of his series?
Look. I look at Kyle Jamieson and I think he's going to be a player. He could very well be a player who ends up with a career average of 23, 22, something like that, which is like Dale Steyn, Malcolm Marshall sort of territory. I don't think he's going to end up with a career average of 16, which is where he's at the moment. And so that means he's going to have some bad days. You can't. He's not going to stay doing where he's at. He's going to have some bad days, and that's the thing with you've got to be good enough and lucky enough. And he's had the luck go his way. He's going to have a run where it doesn't go his way. There was a number of times where he beat the bat, or he got some batsmen in trouble, and then they just managed the ball didn't go to hand in the first test. The second one, a few did. He's a very good player, and he's as long as they don't spend too long talking about him as an all-rounder, and they just focus on him being a great bowler, he could be the best bowler in the world if he's got all of the skills and the attributes to do it.
A lot of people might not know this, but he's not that young. It feels like he's been around for 10, 15 years, but he's around, I think, 25, 26.
New Zealanders don't tend to debut before that. There's very few New Zealanders come in straight away. And part of that is that we have a pretty strong domestic cricket at the moment. So you have to actually get through that. And he had to get through. He was certainly behind Lockie Ferguson in the pecking order. And I to be honest, Lockie Ferguson has been New Zealand's best red ball bowler in domestic cricket by quite a margin. So playing
is that
together
because of his pace?
Because of his pace. Yeah, but also he swings the ball in. So for a left-hander facing a right-arm in-swing bowler is really tough. When he drops his pace back a little bit and focuses on swinging the ball, he's just deadly against the right-handers and left-handers, and then he's got the pace to clean up the tail. So, he's a very good bowler, Lockie Ferguson. And he would have walked into a New Zealand team in the past, but just not this one. And you've got other guys like Matt Henry. I mean, he's averaging below 20 or 21 in county cricket, something like that, playing against the guys in England, just destroying them year after year. And he can't make the New Zealand team. You've got Doug Bracewell, who's he's a genuinely good bowler. And in any other era, people would say, why is he not being picked? No one's saying that about Doug Bracewell at the moment. So we could put together a second team at the moment who were outstanding bowlers. And because of that, you've got to pay your dues to make the team. You can't just walk into the team unless you're really something special. There's a guy, Neil Smith, who's playing for Wellington this year. He's just moved to Wellington. He looks like the goods. He's 24, I think, and people aren't even talking about him. But he's taken truckloads of wickets in domestic cricket, and he can bat too, which is he can actually bat, unlike Jamieson, who had a couple of good innings. Smith is a guy that could actually hold a bat properly. And he's a guy that could potentially be a number 7, number 8 for New Zealand in the future, and bowling, 15, 20 overs, a Jacques Kallis type bowler.
And of course, Ross Taylor went on got his fairy tale. Probably not with the ball as most people would have thought. You'd think he'd do it with the bat. You mentioned that New Zealand don't really do that, not really traditionally do that, those kind of things. But Tom Latham in his interview said that it was the most pressured catch he's ever taken, and it was the most pressure situation he's ever faced because he wasn't sure to do that with Ross Taylor to bowl him. I'm sure Ross Taylor will probably thank him 10, 15 years. As far as the match goes, probably not important, but it's a nice little memento for Ross Taylor.
Oh, it's really cool. The thing that was interesting about it is New Zealand had to clean up the Bangladesh innings before the end of the 79th over, or else they were potentially in overrate trouble. So if New Zealand took the last wicket before the end of the 79th over, and this wicket came in the 79th over, if New Zealand didn't do that, then there'd been more than 120 completed overs. And so we hit the 121 overs, and then the overrate calculations come into play, and New Zealand could have lost World Test Championship points. And there'd been a lot of medical timeouts, so it was hard to know, but I reckon that we were about 2 or 3 overs behind. And so at that point there, that would have been potentially 2 or 3 points deducted from New Zealand's total. The fact that Ross Taylor took that wicket in that over, if that hadn't happened, that could have cost New Zealand 3 points, and possibly, it could have been the difference in qualifying or not qualifying. At the end of the thing, when we get to the final, if New Zealand make it, it may well be down to Ross Taylor getting that wicket in the 79th over, at the 80th over 79.3 against Bangladesh. And that's why I was surprised New Zealand gave him that over. I would have thought that they would have had someone else bowl that over and then given him the 80th over when it didn't matter anymore. And just delayed the new ball by 1 over. But instead they gave him that one and he took it.
Well, I don't want to make a serious thing out of this, but did you think Tom Latham was hoaxed into by the crowd, because the crowd were cheering, they were chanting? We saw Ross Taylor warm up. Was there a little bit of a coax? Did you get talked into it by the crowd?
I think there was, and I think I reckon Tom Latham probably didn't know that the overrate calculation where they were sitting, because if he had have known that they needed to take the wicket that over, I don't think he would have given Ross Taylor the ball. That was a brave move, but it paid off.
Well, like I said, I'm sure Ross Taylor will thank him 15, 20 years down the track.
I think Ross Taylor's probably going to thank him tonight. He will know very much that was a gift wicket. And I've got to say, good on the batsman. I don't know if it was Shoreful, or I don't remember if it was Shoreful or Eberdot, who decided to try and hit the ball out of the park. That was the right thing to do.
Eberdot.
I mean, you shouldn't be trying to block out that over. You should be trying to hit it out of the park, because you're not going to block out 3 days with number 9 and number 10 and 11. You may as well give Ross Taylor the chance to get a wicket and yourself a chance to hit a six. That's the right thing to do, and good on him for doing it. It's good sportsmanship.
Well, all these part-timers taking wickets, part-timers in Ross Taylor's case. Joe Root's taking wickets, Ross Taylor's taking wickets. So it's good to see all these little part-timers getting a go. And Steve Smith took a wicket in the Ashes, fantastic.
I think Ross Taylor is not quite in the same quality of bowler as Joe Root and Steve Smith. I don't think he would have ever been considered an all-rounder, whereas both of those were were briefly considered all-rounders.
It looks good. None for 3 off 0-0-1. That looks that if he believes in that little stat padding thing, that's fantastic for his average.
Well, he's ended his career with a batting average of 44 and a bowling average of 16. I mean, both of those numbers are better than Imran Khan.
Oh my God! Now back to the bigger picture. Picture. Do you think Bangladesh were a bit conservative in this Test match? Did you think they were happy with the draw instead of playing to win?
No. Well, I mean, they would have been happy with the draw after day one.
Of course,
after day two.
Of course.
No, I don't think they were too conservative. Yeah. I think some of it is also, in that first day, it just didn't. They didn't take. There was those 50-50 chances didn't go to hand, whereas in the first Test they had, and they make a big difference when the two teams are not even in terms of ability. You need the luck to go your way, and they did in the first Test, and they were good enough to make to take advantage of it. Other Bangladesh teams or New Zealand wouldn't have been good enough to take advantage of it. These guys were, and they looked like a serious unit going forward. But the second Test, they didn't have those rubber the green things didn't go that way. And once it started going New Zealand's way, New Zealand were just too good. And New Zealand have had plenty of games where we've been in the Bangladesh's shoes. We know what that's like. That's basically our whole history of Test cricket. So we do feel for them. But it's our turn to be a good team at the moment. And it's quite nice.
So New Zealand won by innings, 117 runs. They draw the series 1-1. Moving forward, Michael, the ODIs are actually against Australia. I thought that they were actually against Bangladesh, so I just checked there, and they're actually against Australia, which has taken me off guard. I didn't even know we were playing ODIs against New Zealand.
It'll be an Australian B team and a New Zealand B team potentially, because
they'll play Ross Taylor though, won't they?
Yeah, well, they'll definitely pick Ross Taylor because he's not in the Test team. The players who are playing against South Africa in the Tests are not going to be able to get to the ODIs in Australia. The ODIs against Australia, and the players from Australia. There's a Test match. There's some Test matches they're playing as well. I think that means that their Test players won't be in that ODI team as well. So it's going to be
got Pakistan. Pakistan.
So what's going to happen is that Australia are going to be playing Pakistan, New Zealand are going to be playing South Africa, and then another New Zealand team is going to be playing another Australian team because of the quarantine and things. They're not going to be able to get the players together. So Ross Taylor will certainly be in that side, but not sure who else will be.
To give you the dates, the first starts at the 30th of January to the they've got a one-off T20 to the 8th of February. New Zealand's next Test match is on the 17th, as you said, against South Africa.
We've got some ODIs against the Netherlands as well, I think.
They actually, now you have mentioned that they do have a heavy white ball schedule coming up, New Zealand.
Well, that's how New Zealand cricket make money. They don't make anything, they lose money off Tests. So
they've actually got it. Yeah, they've got 4 white ball matches against Netherlands. I'm not sure if that's in Netherlands or New Zealand. I presume that's in New Zealand.
It's in New Zealand.
So, I've got it here,
There's a couple of the players are already here playing domestic cricket. New Zealand, we have from the Netherlands. There's quite a few Dutch Kiwis. So they have dual eligible, can play New Zealand as locals, but play for the Netherlands. And New Zealand cricket basically said, at the moment, we will help support the Netherlands. We'll let the Dutchies players play as local players.
Australia had a couple of those, Dirk Nennis and Tom Cooper, who played domestic cricket in Australia, and then they played for Netherlands. And then after that, the 2nd of June, England. But we'll mention that when that comes around. So anyway, we'll wrap this show up. It's a short show, but anyway, Michael, you'll probably be happy with that. Not too much time on it for an hour, but got like we have before. But we'll definitely bring you for the New Zealand and South Africa Test matches. Me personally, I'm not like you, Michael. I know you love white ball cricket as well. I've fallen pretty much out of white ball cricket since the '07 World Cup. That's just my preference. I don't think it's as entertaining as anymore, thanks to T20. That's my opinion. So don't feel disrespected, Michael, if we don't bring you back for the white ball stuff. But right. My God, we'll definitely bring you for the South Africa matches against New Zealand. So thank you, Michael, for reviewing these Test series against Bangladesh. But before we do, we'll get a quick answer. Who was the player of the series for you?
I think I'd say Liton Duss. I think he batted well in both matches, and he was outstanding with the gloves in the first game. So I think probably I'd put him as the player of the series.
Yep. For reference, Devon Conway, I think, won player of the series. I think was it Devon Conway?
Yeah, I mean, I can see why he scored 100 did he score 100 in both matches?
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
Yeah. So you can see why he got it, but I think that Liton Duss probably just edged him for mine.
Okay, I got no problem with that. If Liton Duss was the man of the series, I wouldn't have had a problem with that. I think that could have gone either way. I think because he was more consistent, Conway probably got it, just ahead. But I wouldn't have minded. I think it could have went either way. I think I agree with you on that one. But anyway, Michael, thank you for joining us. Please follow Michael on Twitter. Myself, 3 Point Spanish King, and we will look forward to seeing Michael in the South African Test matches. Michael, thank you for coming.
Brilliant. Well, thanks for having me.
No problem. We'll definitely bring you back. Do not worry about that. Of course, thank you guys, and we'll see you next time to review the Ashes 5th day test match. So thank you guys. See you, Michael.